is up, guys? I am Josh, and this is hashtag Life Choices.
I am Anath. This is the podcast where we aim to help you make the best life choices.
I am David, here to welcome you to Table Talk Thursdays.
Lastly, I am Lem, and this is our weekly segment where we talk anything and everything under the sun. Thought-provoking questions, life-changing stories, or even the most random of things.
Yes, and today we have Table Talk Thursdays where we discuss anything, but we're actually going to go back to something we discussed before. So 2 weeks ago, we started this series on life skills, and we asked the question, what is the most important life skill? And the four of us, we shared our own version of what the most important life skill is. And at this point in time, we are moving on to the second most important life skill for all of us, which is financial management, brought up by Lem over here. So Lem, could you remind us?
Okay.
And just to add, if you don't know what life skills we're talking about, go and check the first Table Talk Thursday episode.
So I think that's episode number 2. So Lem, could you tell us more about why you think this is such an important life skill? And later on, we'll delve into a step-by-step process or practical step-by-step process wherein we can find out how to develop that life skill.
So maybe I'll just run you through why I came up with this, why I raised this up in our discussion in the first place. Well, essentially at the very early age, I realized that I need money. The world kind of revolves around it. There's this Zoid. If you know what that is, it was a robotic toy back then.
if you know what that is, you're kind of old.
You're our age.
You're our age.
And we're not that old.
We're not that old. That's why I said kind of though.
So I really wanted that, but I couldn't just get it off the shelf because it costed money.
And if you got it off the shelf, that would be stealing, man. Don't do that.
And we do not want that on.
Steal.
Listeners, don't take that advice.
We don't endorse stealing.
We don't endorse that at all.
Not at all.
So yeah, everything in the world requires money, and it cuts across culture. It cuts across generations, young and old. There will come a point where we'll have to use money and interact with it. And so for me, the most important or essential life skill is to learn how to handle your money. And that's where I'm coming from, at least when I raised that up 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it's so important that it surrounds our life, so much so that the Bible even says the root of all evil is the love of money, because it's that important.
Okay. Although it's important to handle your money, there's a risk of placing it on that pedestal where it consumes your life, and you put too much importance on money and what it can bring. And I just like to throw out that question to all you guys. How should we view money in the way we manage it?
Yeah, actually, that's a good starting point. That one of the key ways that we can manage money is realizing that it's not everything. It is important and it is everywhere, but we need to realize that it's not everything.
Yeah, there's this quote that says money can buy happiness, but what I think it really means is money can buy convenience at most.
Yeah, so I don't think money can buy happiness, but it buys us things that seem to give us happiness. But we shouldn't just focus on this, like, I need more money so that I can buy more happiness, because a lot of celebrities and more famous people will tell you that if you focus on the riches and the fortunes, it's not a very fulfilling life. So you ask, what is our perspective on money as we manage it? I think that money should serve a greater good, that beyond just the things that we want to spend on, find a way so that you could share those blessings with other people. So you might be somebody who is not so fortunate, should not have a lot of money, but you should always think to that perspective that maybe there is someone who is even less fortunate than you, who isn't as blessed when it comes to money. So that is why I'm saying it should serve a greater purpose. Apart from allocating where you can spend, think of how you could bless other people as well. So it doesn't have to be strangers completely. It could be your relatives. Find a way to help them have a better life. I was actually shooting this commercial earlier today with my mom, and she was interviewing this person, and she has this bag restoration business, and she asked, can you tell me an experience that really struck you? And she told us this story about this boy. So this, I think, teenage boy around 19 went into their store, had this bag restored, and the person in the store asked, hey, well, who's this for? So basically he said it was for his mom. So those kinds of things, that your money serves a greater purpose. So that boy, the money that he would have spent for himself, he spent it for someone else. So you try to assess your spending habits in that way as well. Am I completely self-centered in spending it for myself? Because sure, you'll have all the things you want, but then the things that truly matter are those connections with other people that you can only get if you choose to use money for a greater purpose.
And you have to manage it well, because you have to provide for your family.
Yes.
You have to give where it matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
At the risk of sounding too privileged, I'd just like to throw out what would be our views. I mean, how would people who lack a lot of this resource manage with what they have? What are some practical tips you guys can
this is where we
out?
delve into the practical.
Yeah.
So my parents are financial, I think they say financial experts, because they give seminars on money management. And one of the things that they keep drilling to us is that one thing a lot of people say is live within your means. And my parents would say, no, don't live within your means. Live below your means. So let's say, for example, establish a standard of living that you have right now, that you can afford with your money. Live below that. Because at some point in time, you may have emergencies, but if you live within your means, when an emergency comes, you don't have room to be able to address those emergencies. So one thing that my parents suggest as you live within your means is a principle called 70-20-10. So 70% is what you call the revolving fund. So that is what you use to spend on anything.
On your bills,
your bills, your food,
yeah.
your conveniences. So that's 70%. 20% is your savings. So you save that. You start out in the bank, start for just emergencies. And emergencies isn't, oh, hey, Samsung went on a sale and they're nope, that is not an emergency.
Not a sponsor either.
Not a
just
sponsor
saying.
either. Yes.
But if they want to,
lifechoicesph@gmail.com. Any sponsors, we welcome that. But basically, say for example, Samsung has a discount, 50% off, and you're like, whoa, that's an emergency. I need to pull out my savings to pay for that sale. No, it's not an emergency because you don't save 50%. You spend the, let's say, 10,000 you weren't intending to spend. So that 20% is reserved for your emergencies. And what's the 10%? This is when I say it's meant to serve a greater purpose. For me, I'm a Christian and I believe this goes to God. But to you, if you don't believe that, you could give it to your charity, give it to someone in need, because at some point in time, it's going to come back to you. I'm a firm believer in that. Given it will come back to you because somehow it's going to find its way around and it will come back
And
to
I'm
you.
glad there's this 10% just to keep a check that really it's not all about us.
Yes.
Because there's a tendency to think that all the money in the world can get me my happiness, my joy, serve my purpose. But that 10% kind of, for me, seems like just a check for us, an internal check, just so we don't get consumed by our own selfish desires.
You ask yourself, am I able to give that? Because if you're not able to, then you start questioning,
why?
Why can't
Why
you give
can't
that?
I help others?
Yeah.
Things like that.
And one more practical tip connected to that is the 70, 20, and 10. You divide that even before you spend. Because sometimes what happens to us is we spend. Whatever we have at the end is our savings. No, you already separate the 20% and the 10% at the beginning so that you don't overspend and you always have your savings. That's one of the biggest practical tips. We always tend to save our excess when in fact we should spend our excess. So whatever we have that is in surplus after we've set aside the first 30%, that is what we spend.
And I want to bring up the point of being an impulsive buyer.
Oh, yes.
I am a massive impulsive buyer.
Online shopping, that aisle in the grocery right before you
his
go to the
mom
cashier.
complain
I'm the,
all the things delivered at her doorstep.
I'm the type of person that would be scrolling on the internet. I would see an ad. I would get so excited and I would buy it.
Oh no.
Without thinking about it. And that has happened several times over the last couple of months. And my advice to you when making decisions about purchases, take time to think about it. Because I find that when I want something and when I spend time thinking about it, then I realize maybe I don't actually need it. And the example I could give you was these really nice pair of headphones that I wanted, and I've been wanting it for a while. And so I had my eyes on it. They were expensive, but I really did want it. And so, I said, okay, this is an expensive thing, so I'm not going to make a decision. So I sat on it for about a month or more than a month, and I was thinking and praying, help me make the decision, God. And so after about a month or more than a month, I finally decided that I didn't need it, right? And so I saved a significant amount of money because I realized that I didn't need it. On the other hand, there was something else I wanted, which was a watch. And this I sat on for 4 months because I was thinking day in, day out, do I want this? Do I want to make the investment? And after 4 months of thinking, I decided. So really, if you're someone who is an impulsive buyer and you are someone who will buy things as soon as you see it, sit on it, think about it, because eventually you might realize that you don't want it or you don't need it, that it was just a thought in the moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to differentiate between your needs and your wants. Like track your everything down. If there's a practical tip I can give you, like track all your expenses down. That's going to cause you to think, I'm spending so much money, and then it will cause you to think, what do I really need and what do I really want?
Yeah, and that's actually not so hard. Right now, there are a lot of applications on your phone that allows you to log your like purchases, allows you to log your income, and you're able to track how much am I spending, how much do I have left, and then I don't know about you guys, but I do this, and then I see my money diminishing, and I'm like, nope, I should stop spending because you could actually see the value go down. So for me, I set my savings aside, and then I see my revolving fund going down, and I'm like, oh no, it's going down. So even if I haven't reached the end of it, I know I can because I already set aside my savings. I still start to panic. So that's really good because you're able to set a discipline for yourself by tricking your mind into thinking, wow, this is all the money I have left. And going back to Inath's point about impulse spending, something I learned is when, let's say for example, you're at a store and then you see that object and you really want it, try to just put it back, leave, come back in a few days. If it's still there and you still want to buy it, maybe it's time for you to buy it. But taking the time out gives you the time to realize that, hey, maybe I don't need it. You go home, you check out your cabinet. Hey, I have a shirt like that. I don't need to buy it. So take that time. Don't spend immediately unless you know it's really a need. Say, for example, my camera needs batteries or else it's going to die. I'm going to buy it. But then say, for example, it's just an accessory for my camera that I don't really need. I can take the time to set it aside, go home. Do I really need to come back? And then if it doesn't call to me in the same way, then I probably don't need it. So use that strategy so that you prevent things like impulse spending.
Oh, on a personal note, I actually do what Anath is doing. Except what I do is I write it down on a notebook. If I have things that I want that are quite expensive, and I feel, oh man, I want to buy this right now, instead of just even approaching it, I put it down on a notebook. And I go back to that notebook after a week, after 2 weeks, to see if that desire is still there. Because for some things, impulse buys, by its nature, have the word impulse. So it may just be in the heat of the moment. The marketing was spoke to you really well. You're really buttered up, so you might have that impulse to buy. But if you look at it on the notebook, after some time, you may realize, hey, this is not actually something I still want. But for the things that are there, I'd say that, hey, you know what? If you keep saving and saving and saving, and there are things that you want and you deny yourself of it, I'd say that at some point it's gonna frustrate you.
Yeah.
There are some moments where you have to treat yourself. And in this life, there are some joys that you can enjoy. I mean, you don't want to deny yourself of the things you want. Or else, I guess on a personal note, why am I spending all this money and not enjoying some of it? It is your right to have some enjoyment from your earnings. So yeah, just be smart on where it goes to.
Yeah, just determine also, are you at the economic status where you can start enjoying those things?
definitely.
Because let's say you have responsibilities, you're a father, you have to provide first for your children, and maybe the extra after saving and everything, maybe go spend it for yourself. Be wise about it. But yes, that is so right, because a lot of us spend time working and spend time doing all of these things, and then you come to a point where you're like, oh, I'm so tired, so exhausted from work, and I don't enjoy life. And then there's this quote where it actually says that you come to a point where you're not working to live, you're living to work, and you don't learn to live life and you don't enjoy it, because everything that you do after you work is really just spent on things you need. But I'm pretty sure you work hard enough, you come to a point where you have some excess, go spend it on yourself and enjoy it. It doesn't even have to be something big. I once had this encounter with one of the employees in our cafeteria, and he says that every time it's payday, he goes out to Jollibee and buys a burger for himself, and that's his tradition, reminding him, there are still things that he can enjoy in life, even with his small income, which isn't really big. He goes out and he treats himself every time he gets his paycheck, and it's not big. It's just a burger. It won't cost him much, but it's something that represents his want and that he's spending on it.
Yeah,
still.
and not everything you enjoy has to be paid for. Right?
Yes.
I mean, I enjoy just a leisurely walk with family, and that costs nothing but the presence of those
And
people.
time, yeah.
And time.
And also, I want to connect this to what we discussed on Monday about having a mentor. So my friends know I have a spending problem. And so what my friends now have done is they tell me that if I ever open an online store, I'm supposed to inform them so that they can talk me out of it. So really, we talked about having a mentor in our Movie Monday segment, and I highly encourage you, if you're someone who does purchase impulsively, that doesn't know how to manage your finances effectively, know that there are other people who can help you. They will look at you and say, okay, I don't think you need that, so why are you spending time desiring it, or why do you want it, right? When you've got an objective view, that will really help you, and that's something you should try looking for, someone who can help you manage those funds.
Yeah, not necessarily a mentor, like a big figure, but just somebody who
Even
can
your
keep you.
peers.
Yeah, somebody who can keep you accountable. My brother does that to me when I say, "Hey, I want to buy this." And it's like, "You sure you want to buy that?" And the thing is, since it's my brother, when I actually do end up buying it, he gives me these dirty looks, and it's like, "You bought it. How could you?" So it helps keep me accountable in that aspect of financial management. And actually, yeah, that pretty much wraps up our episode for today. But actually, before I wrap up, I actually want to give a special shout out to Lamwell here, because I told you guys earlier about how money should serve a greater purpose and how it shouldn't just be spent on our wants. It shouldn't be just be saved, but also spend it on something you believe is worthwhile. So it could be other people, it could be your tithes if you believe the same thing I believe. But Lamwell, actually a few weeks ago, or I think exactly a week ago, we actually are putting up our website, and I don't have an income. David here is minimum wage, and Enath is still a student. But Lamwell, considering where he is right now, spent for our first year for the website. And I just want to give a special shout out, because that just shows that money serves a greater purpose, and that it's not for himself. It won't exactly help his life, at least just his own life, but he's able to devote that to something that's more worthwhile, not just his wants, but also something that could help other people. So actually, just want to give that.
Praise God, man.
Yes,
Praise God.
yeah. So I want to
Thank you, Lem. We appreciate that.
Yeah, so I actually just wanted to give that attention, and I also want to tell the audience that we're launching our website soon. We're not decided on the name yet. We're thinking lifechoicesph.com. So maybe by this time it's already up. We'll see, but we'll just watch out for that. We'll announce it on our social media pages. So that's Life Choices PH on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and hashtag Life Choices for Spotify and YouTube.
And that's a subtle hint to follow us on all social media.
Yes, that is a subtle hint. And I just want to say this podcast is brought to you by none of our sponsors, because we don't have any of them yet. But once again, lifechoicesph@gmail.com if you guys want to sponsor us. So at this point in time, I just want to wrap things up. So how do you manage your finances? First is have the perspective that money serves a greater purpose. It's not simply for yourself. Find a way to bless other people. Second is 7-20-10. 70% revolving, 20% savings, and 10% you give to other people or give to your church. Third is don't be impulsive. Sit on it. It could be months, it could be weeks, but just spend time thinking, do I really need it? Should I really spend on this? And then you go with that purchase, should you still have that desire. Fourth, track your expenses. When you track your expenses, you start checking. It's like, oh, I'm spending so much. You become more aware, and now you can make better purchase decisions because of that. Fifth is write it in a notebook. Assess, is the desire still there after a few weeks? Kind of the same thing as sitting on it, but basically just going back on that point and see, do I still want that object? And lastly, find somebody you could be accountable to, because accountability is one of the best ways that we could foster good and consistent habits. So at this point in time, I just want to thank you for listening to the hashtag Life Choices podcast. Hope to have you guys back here on Saturday for Situational Saturdays. But before you go, we just want to remind you, in this life, we have no choice but to make choices.
So choose wisely.
See you in the next podcast. If you guys weren't listening for the past how many minutes, you zoned out, maybe you're driving and you got into an argument with the car next to you. Yeah, this is the part to listen to. So first, we started by saying don't box yourself in. Don't confine yourself to what your course is, because your passion could be lying outside of it. Go outside from where you are. You need to be able to involve yourself in different things, because with the things you're involved now, you don't know your passion. So maybe you should go and try other things, and maybe you will find it. Next is that you need to nurture your passion. It is not just a matter of finding it, not something you stumble upon, but once you have it, you have to nurture it. And going back to the 4 points that I talked about, you need to check your interests, practice something you're not interested in, find the purpose of what you're doing, and always focus on growth. And this is all encapsulated by saying start with why you're doing something. Let's say, for example, being a waiter. Like, I know we keep talking about it, and like, it is a very noble profession. That is something difficult, and it's
stressful.
Yeah. Yes,
Yeah.
it is a stressful job. But just for the sake of example, let's say, for example, you're being a waiter and you don't really want to be a waiter. Just think of why you're doing it, and that is your passion. Focus on the why and not the how and what. So at this point in time, I just want to thank all the listeners for tuning in and listening to the #Life Choices podcast. We hope to see you again on Monday for Movie Mondays. But at this point in time, I just want to remind everyone, in this life, we have no choice but to make choices. So choose wisely. See you in the next podcast.